The heavy safe door creaked open with a sound that echoed like thunder in the silent mansion. Inside, where there should have been stacks of bills, shining jewels, and bonds worth billions of won, there was nothing but emptiness. The billionaire, Mr. Ji-hoon, stood still, his jaw tightening, his heart beating coldly. For most men, this would have been a disaster. But for him, this emptiness was no accident. It was a trap, an elaborate plan to reveal the truth about the two women who mattered most inside his home: his beloved mother and the African maid named Margaret. For weeks, whispers of theft had circled around the mansion like restless ghosts, and every time, his mother's accusing finger pointed at Margaret. She was the new maid from Africa, a tall and graceful woman with smooth brown skin and eyes that carried both strength and sadness. She was hardworking, gentle, and never once complained, even when treated unfairly. Yet, the mother insisted she was not to be trusted. Mr. Ji-hoon had seen the quiet dignity with which Margaret worked. She cleaned the vast hallways alone, polished the chandeliers until they sparkled, and cooked meals that filled the mansion with warmth. While other staff rolled their eyes or avoided duties, Margaret worked from dawn until night, humming African hymns that no one understood but everyone felt. Still, his mother hated her. "Get rid of her!" His mother had snapped more than once, her voice sharp as broken glass. "She's a stranger. She's after your money. She doesn't belong here." But Ji-hoon never listened. Instead, he decided to find out the truth for himself. And so, he left his safe empty, pretending it was full of wealth. He knew that only greed would reveal the guilty. That night, as the cameras rolled silently, Ji-hoon hid in the shadows of his study. His chest rose and fell slowly as he waited. Hours passed. Midnight came, and then footsteps, soft, careful, deliberate. The door creaked open. A familiar figure walked in, not Margaret, but his mother. She moved quickly, as though she had done this before. Her eyes darted around the room before fixing on the safe. With trembling hands, she tried the code. The safe opened, and when she saw nothing inside, her face twisted with fury. She muttered words under her breath, curses sharp enough to cut the air. Then, to Ji-hoon's horror, she pulled out her own jewelry box, removed golden bracelets, and tucked them into a small bag. He couldn't believe what his eyes were seeing. His own mother, the woman who raised him, the one he respected, was planning to frame Margaret. She wanted to prove her hatred right, even if it meant destroying an innocent woman. The next morning, the mansion buzzed with tension. Margaret, dressed in her neat maid's uniform, was scrubbing the marble floor when the mother's voice cut through the silence like a whip. "Search her room," she screamed. "She is a thief. She has stolen from this house." The staff froze, their eyes darting between Margaret and the furious woman. Margaret stood up slowly, wiping her hands on her apron. Her heart pounded, but her face remained calm. She knew she had done nothing wrong. Still, fear coiled in her stomach like a snake. When the guards entered her small room, everyone held their breath. Minutes later, one of them pulled out a bag hidden under her bed. Gasps filled the hallway. Inside were the bracelets and gold. Margaret's knees weakened. Her eyes widened in shock. She had never seen that bag before in her life. Her lips trembled, but she whispered firmly, "I did not take this." The mother's laughter was cruel. "Liar! I told you she cannot be trusted. Look at her, pretending to be innocent. She is nothing but a thief." Tears stung Margaret's eyes, but she did not let them fall. Instead, she looked straight at Ji-hoon, who had silently appeared at the doorway. His expression was unreadable, cold, distant. He studied her, as though searching for something beyond her words. Then, his deep voice broke the heavy silence. "If I left all my money before you, would you take it, Margaret?" The question struck her like lightning. Everyone waited for her answer. Her throat felt dry, but her voice was steady as she replied, "I would rather sleep hungry than steal, sir. Poverty is not shameful, but greed is a curse." The staff murmured. Even the guards lowered their heads. But Ji-hoon's mother scoffed, shaking with anger. "You believe her lies? She has fooled you. She must be punished." Ji-hoon's eyes never left Margaret. Inside, His chest burned with a storm of emotions. Doubt, curiosity, suspicion, and something else he could not name. But outwardly he remained silent. His face showed no mercy, no softness. Instead, he said only one chilling sentence. "We shall see, Mother. We shall see who the true thief is." And with that, the trap had only just begun. The mansion's air felt heavy that morning, as if the walls themselves carried secrets too dark to speak aloud. The accusations from the previous day still lingered like smoke after a fire. The staff avoided Margaret, whispering behind her back. Some pitied her. Others were quick to believe the billionaire's mother. But Margaret carried herself with quiet strength. She moved from room to room, cleaning, dusting, polishing, her spirit refusing to break. Yet, deep inside, her heart ached. She had left her homeland, Kenya, with nothing but hope. She believed that hard work and honesty could change her life. And now, in this grand house of wealth, she was treated as if she were nothing more than a shadow. That night, the mother sat alone in her golden chair, her mind twisting with malice. The first plan had not worked. Margaret had spoken with too much courage, too much dignity. And worse, her son had not dismissed her. The mother's pride boiled like oil. She would not allow this African maid to win. "No woman will stay in this house," she muttered to herself, her voice sharp, her eyes cold. And especially not her. She decided to strike harder, dirtier. At midnight, when the house was still and the cicadas outside sang their lonely songs, the mother crept into Margaret's small room. The air smelled faintly of soap and lemon polish, the scent Margaret always carried. The mother's lips curled in disgust. She hated how clean and neat Margaret kept even the smallest corner. It was as if her presence brought light to every place she touched. Pulling an envelope stuffed with cash from her robe, the mother slipped it under Margaret's pillow. Then, with a cruel smile, she whispered to herself, "In the morning, this will end her." But she did not know. The mansion's cameras missed nothing. When dawn broke, Margaret woke to the sound of birds singing outside her tiny window. She stretched her tired body, rubbed her eyes, and straightened her sheets. Her hand touched something unusual. Frowning, she pulled out the thick envelope. When she opened it, her breath caught. It was filled with money. Her hands trembled. For a moment, temptation flickered. She was poor. She had siblings back home who went to bed hungry. This money could change their lives. But her conscience screamed louder than her hunger. She knew immediately it was a trap. Margaret fell to her knees beside her bed. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered a prayer. "Lord, protect me from the lies of the wicked. You are my witness. Do not let evil swallow me." She stood, wiped her tears, and walked straight to the billionaire's study. Jihoon was seated at his desk, reading documents, his sharp eyes lifting the moment she entered. Without hesitation, she placed the envelope on his desk. "I found this under my pillow this morning," she said softly, her voice steady though her heart pounded. "It is not mine. I do not know who put it there. I wanted you to see it yourself." Jihoon studied her face in silence. Her honesty startled him. Most people would have hidden the money, or at least tried to explain. But she brought it directly to him, unafraid of the consequences. His chest tightened with an unfamiliar feeling, respect. Before he could respond, the door banged open. His mother stormed in, her voice sharp as thunder. "Check her room," she barked to the guards. "That thief is hiding money again." Jihoon said nothing. He only leaned back in his chair, eyes glinting with quiet calculation. The guards rushed to Margaret's room. Within minutes, they returned, shaking their heads. There was nothing to be found. The mother's face darkened, but she was not done. She pointed at the envelope on the desk and shouted, "You see, she even had the nerve to bring you what she stole," pretending to be innocent. The staff who had gathered in the hallway gasped. Margaret's lips quivered, but she spoke clearly. "I will never take what does not belong to me. Even if I am hungry, even if I am poor, I would rather live in truth than in lies." Her words struck Jihoon's heart like a hammer. He had met many people in his life, business partners, workers, friends, but no one had ever spoken with such strength and weakness. His mother sneered, but he raised a hand, silencing her. Then, with a voice calm but chilling, Ji-hoon said, "Enough. The truth will reveal itself soon." His mother blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" Ji-hoon rose to his feet, his tall frame towering over them. His eyes, dark and unreadable, moved from Margaret to his mother. "I will test her loyalty myself," he declared. And so he set the stage for the cruelest test yet. A test that would not only expose the maid, but also the darkness in his own mother's heart. The mansion was too quiet, too still. Even the chandeliers above seemed to hold their breath as Ji-hoon announced his decision. "I will set a test, and when it is done, the truth will reveal itself." His words lingered in the air like smoke. The staff exchanged nervous glances. Margaret's heart pounded in her chest. Madame Han smirked, believing she had already won. That very evening, Ji-hoon began to set his trap. He called in his most trusted security men, whispering instructions only they could hear. Cameras were adjusted. Guards were repositioned. Locks were changed. Then, with deliberate care, he made sure Madame Han overheard him giving an order to his accountant. "Fill the safe," he said loudly. "All the bonds, all the jewels, all the cash. I'll be leaving on a business trip, and I want it secured." But the truth? The safe was already empty. Nothing sat behind its steel door but shadows. Margaret knew nothing of this. She carried on with her duties as usual. That night she scrubbed the marble staircase until it shone, then polished the long glass windows, her arms aching but her spirit still strong. Every step she took, whispers followed her, but she ignored them. What mattered most to her was not what people thought, but that her conscience stayed clean. Meanwhile, Madame Han's mind burned with greed and hatred. The moment she heard her son mention billions in the safe, she saw her opportunity. "This is it," she muttered to herself in her chambers. "This is how I will finally prove that girl for what she is. A liar, a thief, a disgrace." She waited until the whole house slept. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck midnight, its chimes echoing through the dark corridors. She slipped from her room like a shadow, her silk robe trailing silently behind her. Her eyes glittered with determination. She crept into Ji-hoon's study. The massive desk sat like a throne, papers stacked neatly upon it. The safe stood in the corner, its steel body gleaming faintly under the dim light. Her hands shook as she typed in the code she had watched Ji-hoon use many times before. Click. The lock released. Slowly, she swung the door open. Her eyes widened. Empty. Completely empty. Her mouth dropped. Her chest tightened. "No, no, this cannot be," she whispered frantically. "He said billions were here. Where is it? Where is it?" Her fingers clawed at the shelves inside the safe, but there was nothing. No money, no jewels, no bonds. Nothing. Panic rose in her throat. Her plan was falling apart. If she went back with nothing, Margaret would still stand untouched, and Ji-hoon would never let her go. Her desperation twisted her mind into cruelty. She stormed back into her room, yanked open her jewelry box, and pulled out golden bracelets, diamond earrings, and a pearl necklace, her most prized possessions. She stuffed them into a bag, her eyes wild with determination. "This will be enough," she hissed. "I will hide these in that girl's things. In the morning, she will be destroyed." But she did not know that Ji-hoon was awake, sitting silently in the corner of his study, watching every move on the hidden cameras. His chest ached as he saw the woman who had raised him, the mother he trusted, turn into a thief, a liar, a schemer. "Mother," he whispered painfully to himself. "How could you?" The next morning came with a storm of accusations. Madame Han burst into the dining hall, dragging the bag of jewelry in her hands. The staff followed nervously, their eyes wide. Margaret stood by the table, quietly serving tea as she always did. "There!" Madame Han shouted, her voice trembling with triumph. "Look what I found in her room. She has been stealing from us all along." Gasps filled the air. The staff stepped back, some whispering, some shaking their heads. Margaret froze, her eyes wide with shock. She looked at the bag in disbelief. "That is not mine," she said, her voice breaking. I have never seen those things before. Madame Han sneered. Liar. Every day you act innocent, but your true colors are showing now. I told you, Ji-hoon. I told you she would destroy this house. Margaret's hands trembled as she placed the teapot down. Her throat was dry, but she forced herself to speak. I did not take these things. Cannot steal. I will not steal. Even if I am poor, I will never stain my hands with such shame. Her words, steady yet broken, echoed through the hall. Ji-hoon sat silently at the head of the table. His face was calm, but his eyes burned like fire. The entire staff waited for his decision. Would he finally dismiss Margaret? Would he hand her to the police? Slowly, he rose to his feet. The room grew still. Mother, he said quietly, his deep voice cutting through the tension. Are you certain this is what you found? Yes, Madame Han snapped, her face alight with victory. I found it with my own hands. She is guilty. Ji-hoon's lips curved into a cold smile. His eyes, however, were heavy with pain. He lifted a small remote from the table and pressed a button. The massive screen on the wall lit up. The staff gasped. Madame Han froze. The video played the security footage from the night before. It showed her sneaking into the study, opening the safe, finding it empty, and then storming off to her room. Then, another camera revealed her pulling out her own jewelry, stuffing it into a bag, and carrying it through the hallway. The truth unfolded in silence. Margaret covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. The staff looked on in disbelief. Ji-hoon's voice was low, filled with heartbreak. Mother, you framed her. Not once, but twice. You betrayed not only her, but me. The mansion fell silent. For the first time, Madame Han's face lost its pride. She staggered back, her lips trembling, her eyes darting wildly as the weight of her lies pressed down on her. And in that silence, Margaret stood tall. She was no longer just a maid. She was a woman whose truth had been proven before all. But the storm was not over. The real test was yet to come. The billionaire's mansion was unusually quiet that night. Even the walls seemed to hold their breath. Margaret had just finished cleaning the marble staircase when she noticed the billionaire, Jun Seo, pacing restlessly in his study. His usually calm face was tight with worry. His brows furrowed deeply. He had set the ultimate test. His mother had insisted again and again that Margaret was nothing but a thief, a curse, and a danger to the family. To prove the truth once and for all, Jun Seo had emptied his private safety box, where he usually kept documents, jewelry, and cash worth billions, and left it open. He wanted to see who would betray him. Margaret didn't even know about the trap. She was too busy polishing the chandelier and preparing Jun Seo's tea as she always did, humming softly in her beautiful African accent. She had no clue that her loyalty was being tested in the most dangerous way. But his mother knew. The older woman's footsteps echoed down the hallway like the ticking of a time bomb. Her eyes were cold and sharp, and her lips curled into a wicked smile. For weeks she had tried every possible way to destroy Margaret, spreading rumors, insulting her, even threatening her behind closed doors. But nothing had worked. Her son had refused to fire the African maid, claiming she was hardworking and loyal. Tonight she thought, I will end this once and for all. She slipped into Jun Seo's study, where the safety box lay wide open. She looked around, making sure no one was watching, then pulled out stacks of crisp dollar notes from her hidden purse. She placed them neatly into the box, pretending as though Margaret had stolen them and carelessly hidden them back. Then she smirked. Tomorrow, my son will see the truth with his own eyes. What she didn't know was that Jun Seo had secretly installed hidden cameras across the study. Every single movement, every evil smile, every lie was being recorded, and he was watching it all in real time from his private screen upstairs. His heart broke. His own mother, the woman who had raised him, was planting lies to destroy the most innocent soul in his house. He clenched his fists in disbelief, whispering to himself, "How could you, mother? How could you sink so low?" The next morning, chaos erupted. His mother stormed into the living room with fake tears streaming down her face. "Son," she cried, "that maid, Margaret, has stolen from you, I found your safety box open and money missing. I told you she could not be trusted. Margaret, who had just finished serving breakfast, froze in shock. She looked at the mother with wide, innocent eyes. Madam, I would never steal. I don't even know where the safety box is kept. Lies! The mother shouted, slamming her hand on the table. I warned you about these women, but you refused to listen. Now see. Junseo leaned back in his chair calmly, his eyes unreadable. He glanced at Margaret, who stood trembling, her hands shaking but her voice steady. Then he turned to his mother. Mother, he said slowly, are you absolutely sure about what you're saying? Yes, she cried. She is a thief. Fire her immediately. Junseo sighed, stood up, and clapped his hands. A large flat screen descended from the ceiling, surprising everyone. With one click, he played the video. The entire room went silent. On the screen, they all saw his mother sneaking into the study at night, pulling money from her purse, and placing it inside the safety box. They saw her smirk, her eyes filled with malice, as she whispered that tomorrow Margaret would be ruined. Margaret gasped, her hands flying to her mouth in disbelief. The maids in the background whispered in shock. The billionaire's mother's face turned pale. That is not me. This is fake, she stammered. But Junseo's voice cut through the room like a blade. Enough, mother. I trusted you. I believed you. But tonight you have exposed yourself, not Margaret. You wanted to destroy her because of her skin, her kindness, her strength. You let hatred blind you. Tears welled up in Margaret's eyes. For the first time, she felt seen, defended, and protected. Junseo turned to her. Margaret, I owe you the biggest apology. You have worked tirelessly even when mistreated. You have been more loyal than anyone in this house. From this day forward, you will no longer be treated as just a maid. Everyone gasped. The mother collapsed onto the sofa, unable to speak. The shame was unbearable. Junseo continued, his voice firm. You, Margaret, will be my most trusted partner, and no one, not even my own mother, will stand in the way of your dignity again. Margaret's lips trembled. She wanted to speak, but her heart was too full. She simply bowed her head, tears of relief rolling down her cheeks. The whole mansion buzzed with whispers. The African maid had not only proven her innocence, but had also exposed the wicked truth about the billionaire's own mother. And as Junseo placed a gentle hand on Margaret's shoulder, everyone in that room knew. This was only the beginning of a bond no lies could ever destroy.
Hello besties, in this powerful story we learned that true character always speaks louder than lies. No matter how much people try to destroy your reputation, if you remain loyal, honest and hardworking, the truth will eventually reveal itself. At the same time, jealousy and judgment will always be exposed even if it comes from those closest to us. Thank you so much for watching. Kindly like, subscribe and share.